I'd like to extend a special welcome to those visiting for the first time today. I would draw your attention to the announcements printed in your order of service for the wealth of activities that are available for our community and our friends. We are a busy congregation with many goings-on. I would invite you to connect with our coordinator of congregational life, Melissa Egler, Reverend Luke, or myself. We can answer questions about our church, share ways to get involved with our congregation, and help you as you explore this new community. Jerry Katzman, the president of our congregation, has matters of the congregation to discuss.
Thank you, Mark. I have lots of sheets of paper here, but I only have one sheet of paper that I'm with remarks, so stay focused, stay with me. I've been a member of this church for about 40 years. When I first started coming to the church, I was a little apprehensive about what it would be like. I grew up in a Jewish humanist home, and I wasn't terribly comfortable coming to a Christian house of worship, coming to a church. I wasn't sure how I would respond to celebrating Christmas. But over the years, I've gotten used to this place. I'm very comfortable here. I love this congregation. So let me just remind you, yes, Virginia, there is a possibility that young men will actually grow up and mature. And I'm standing here as an example of that. At one of the first Christmas Eve services, Scotty Meek was the minister, and he built the service around the UU religious educator Sophia Faz's poem that has a line in it, "Every night a child is born is a holy night." And I found that service to be surprisingly and amazingly moving for me. This last Christmas, Reverend Luke Stevens Royer built that Christmas Eve service around welcoming the stranger. The story of Christmas, he told us, is a story of a poor, brown-skinned, strange family seeking shelter and compassion in the little town of Bethlehem. And that's also a story that I found amazingly and surprisingly touching. This last week, our board voted to become a full sanctuary church, and on Friday, you should have received an email letter from the board and a letter from Reverend Luke about this step. Let me just remind you how we got here. Last spring, the Social Justice Council brought forward a congregational resolution on immigrant rights and sanctuary. The Racial Justice Task Group began a 5-month discernment process for the congregation to learn about witnessing immigration injustice, about advocating for immigration reform, and the ethical, practical, and legal issues surrounding sanctuary. In early October, the congregation voted on the resolution, and although there was some opposition, the resolution passed with an overwhelming majority. That meant that as a church community, we would be advocating for immigrant rights and supporting sanctuary. It put the onus on the board to decide if we would open our doors to provide sanctuary for undocumented immigrants. The board has spent 5 months trying to understand the issues around this step. Questions about space, remodeling, volunteer support, finances, risk, and actual need for this space have been addressed. Not all of these questions have been fully answered, but we have addressed these questions. A sanctuary steering committee has been established to help us define the processes needed to support sanctuary guests. Although there was some opposition and hesitancy at the board, like the congregational resolution, this board motion to become a full sanctuary passed with overwhelming support. The letter on Friday from the board describes most of the obstacles that we were questioning, how the board has addressed them. The letter from the minister is about ethical and personal obstacles many of us face with this decision. I hope you've had a chance to read these two letters. I don't want to review the contents of these letters from the pulpit, but if you have not received the letters or if you compulsively deleted them already, I do have copies of those letters, hard copies, which I will have down in the Commons room if you would like to see them, and if you would like to talk about some of the issues regarding going to full sanctuary. Now, in addition, this afternoon at 12:30, we have a cottage meeting in the chapel, and this meeting is in anticipation of next week's kickoff of the annual fund drive, and will be about next year's budget and what the board is up to, including sanctuary. So please join us if you're able, 12:30 in the chapel. Let me just finish by expressing how grateful I am and how proud I am to be a member of this congregation, a church in which we support each other in our spiritual journey, a church in which we welcome the stranger with compassion and we practice justice. I'm thankful to all of you who have made possible this witnessing, this advocacy, and who have put us in this privileged position of being able to provide shelter and sanctuary. Thank you.
In times of uncertainty such as we have now, we have always come together for comfort and support to bolster our hope and courage for the way ahead. Songs are a way to remind us that we are not alone in the struggle for a better world. My first memory of songs that stirred my soul were the patriotic songs of my father, a World War II U.S. Marine. As I grew into a high school and college student in the 60s, and my understanding of the world evolved, the music that resonated with me was the protest music of that era. The civil rights struggle and the anti-Vietnam War were rich and fertile ground for songs of hope and courage. I came to this church in the 1980s, and I found a rich tradition of songs of love and justice that now are my comfort when the way ahead appears dark and foreboding. Now more than ever, we need to remind ourselves of our strength and purpose to continue the long walk to a more perfect world. We light the chalice today as a beacon of righteousness and justice, a clear signal that our courage and hope will not falter.
This morning, for the Time for All Ages, I'm actually going to invite the children and youth to stay in your seats next to your families, because we're a little short for space up here. And the choir and some of our staff are going to offer this piece of music for our Time for All Ages this morning. In a church like ours, it takes a lot of people. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of details, it takes a lot of meetings, a lot of agendas, a lot of energy to care for our building and to care for our budget, to care for our programs, to care for one another. And the reason we do it, the reason we keep things running, the reason we keep things vibrant, the deeper reason of every little detail and agenda and meeting and task is to remind ourselves of who we want to be in the world, to remind ourselves of who we can be in the world. It's to open our doors to those who need a blessing on their lives or who need to be saved from their isolation or despair. It's to create space for people to find meaning in their life and strength and hope and resiliency and love and welcome. The whole reason we do all of it is to nurture spirituality. It's to practice justice. At its core, this church is about love, a love that's large enough to hold us, a love that we believe deeply in our history that's large enough to hold the whole world. So choir, what is this church about? Love. Congregation, what is this church about? It's love. One more time all together. What is this church about? Love.
celebrating the wisdom of many traditions.
Opening our doors with radical hospitality.
Condemning racism, poverty, and violence.
Working for justice and equity in our city.
Teaching our children and youth courage and love.
It's not the altar, it's not the sanctuary, it's not the pulpit, and it's not the parking lot, it's not the windows, it's not the microphone. What is the Spirit? Tell me what's the Spirit? What is the Spirit? What is the Spirit? Tell me what's the Spirit? What is the Spirit? What is the Spirit of this church? Oh, it's love. Yes, it's love. And love is the Spirit of this church. Not the walls or steeple, but a gathered people is what makes up the Spirit of this church.
Love is the Spirit. That's the Spirit. Love is the Spirit. That's the Spirit. Love is the Spirit. That's the Spirit of this
And as our children and families and teachers go to religious education, the choir is going to sing them out with a little reprise. Amen, choir. So throughout the year, we hold classes for newcomers to learn about the history and spirit of this church, to find ways to get involved, to learn about our history, and meet others who are considering becoming members. So today we get to welcome some. We did at 9 o'clock, and we are today here at 11, who have recently decided to join our church. And so I want to invite those folks who are here now to come forward and join Melissa and I. There's Jay, I see Jay coming. There's others who, on account of weather and illness and everything else that's making everybody not show up in places these days, who can't be with us today, but we'll hold them in spirit. When we welcome new members, it's a seemingly simple act, putting pen to paper, signing a name, saying welcome, and yet still something more powerful happens. It's a commitment of hearts to hearts. It's a joining of a community, a reconsecrating of ourselves to who we are called to be in the world, naming and honoring new souls among us in the larger family of all souls. Know that this church, Jay, is a home for your soul. Know that these are your people, among many others, and together we will grow our spirits and we will practice justice in forgiveness and grace, in strength and resilience. We will live lives of meaning and of service together. So I invite the congregation in your order of service. There's a litany of welcome that I invite you to get out as Melissa's going to share a little bit.
So I'm thrilled to let you know that this morning we also welcomed Kathy and Joe Schwartz as new members, as well as Reverend Luke and his wife Jenna and family. While he is here as our minister, he is not a member by default. So he chose to be our minister, and he's chosen to become a member. So we're thrilled for that. Before I speak for Jay, I want to also extend that Molly McMillan is unable to be here this morning due to having to work in place of someone affected by the weather. She was very disappointed not to be able to be here this morning, but she shares this with you all. I joined this church with the comfort of knowing I won't be judged by what I believe or don't believe, or more importantly, that I don't know what I believe. I am committed to social justice and helping others, and have finally found a community where I believe I can make a real change. I am committed to this church and will support it wholeheartedly and humbly. And a message from Penny and Earl Jacobson. Due to travel conditions from Albert Lee, Penny and Earl are unable to attend this morning. They extend their thanks to you all for their understanding. Please welcome them all next week. They share these words with you all. From Earl. To fulfill a need to belong, to satisfy the need to serve, to recognize that Jesus was a good man, teacher, leader, but without the baggage of virgin birth, Trinity, creeds, and pledges, to a doctrine that is no longer believable. To emphasize the worth of a person regardless of color of skin, sexual orientation, or different beliefs. And from Penny, attending church here during the past 2 years has been an uplifting worship experience, and I hope to become an active contributing member. It's a pleasure to attend a church where I don't have to edit or cross my fingers during the service. I like being here where I can accept and literally believe what I'm hearing and singing. And from Jay this morning, I believe I've found a place where others walk the same path I've been led to. During the This I Believe talks a few Sundays back, I heard one of our speakers say that she celebrated both the diversity of our faith traditions and the challenge to our thinking this awareness provides. She described our UU connection as finding her tribe, and I can relate to that. Open-minded seekers and thinkers, each of us unique in our own way, working together to make a positive difference in the world that we live in. I want to be part of that.
So Jay, come join me on the chancel. I invite the congregation to speak the words in your order of service. We welcome you into this congregation
And into the larger circle of Unitarian Universalism. We welcome your story, your identity, and the gifts that you bring. May you find a home here for your soul.
And the new members part, we're going to read together, because I just joined at 9. We gladly join with you as members of this church. We will offer our gifts as we are able to the flourishing and well-being of this community, and support the values of this congregation: hospitality, compassion, spiritual growth, and justice. And all together, we covenant to travel together in this religious community. Here may we be affirmed for who we are and challenged to be our best selves. Here may we grow our souls, care for each other and the earth, nurture spiritual growth, practice justice, and together lead lives of meaning, service, and love. We welcome you. I invite you to sign as the congregation sings hymn number 1, verses 2 and 4. Together you can remain seated as we sing.
Praise
invite you to breathe deep the breath of life. Breathe deeply in this circle, this house of love and of justice, of hospitality and of grace. Know that here you are named and you are known as beloved, as sacred, as welcome. I invite you into this time of meditation, this time of prayer, first by sharing silence together.
We are brave, curious, and compassionate thinkers and doers. Together, we create spirituality and community beyond boundaries, working for more justice and more love in our own lives and in the world. We honor all who support us in this ministry. The members of our caring committee are wonderful examples of our compassionate community. We are grateful to Ronice Donovan, serving as caring coordinator, arranging services for our members and friends in need until March 3rd. We thank Alita Borud for her service to the church as our sexton for the last week. Brandy Crawford will take over tomorrow for the upcoming week, and we thank him for that. This is important work, making sure that our church is safe and sound daily. Our flowers today are shared by Kirk and Joe Payne, celebrating their 35th wedding anniversary. We wish them many more. Spirit of life, spirit of community, in which we share and find strength and common purpose. We turn our minds and hearts toward one another, seeking to bring into the circle of community those who are in need of our love and support. In this community, we make time each week to share pieces of our lives with one another. We do this because each person in this community has value. Each person's experience matters. We share our sorrows and joys, knowing that both come into each person's life. Together, we offer comfort and rejoice. We hold Aaron and Pernell Meyer and their family in our hearts this morning. As many of you may know, Aaron and Pernell's oldest son, Jacob, has had many years of struggle. Last week, he was involved in a robbery and assault that resulted in his arrest. The Meyer family has been through much hardship over the last few years and ask for understanding and strength during this upsetting time. Aaron and Pernell are taking a breather this week with their family in the Wisconsin Dells and hope to come back with clear heads to move forward in getting Jacob the help that he needs. Please keep them all in your thoughts. Let us hold them and lift them up in support and love. Through all the seasons of our lives, may we find the courage to reach out in sympathy or need. May the faith and the spirit of life, love for the community of earth, and love for the light in each other be ours now and in all the days to come.
Hold in our hearts this day all those who suffer in mind, in body, or spirit. I invite you to bring the names of those you're holding in your own heart this day in joy or in sorrow, in celebration or in concern, and silently or aloud now in this space to speak their names. For all the names spoken and for all that remain unspoken, may we be forever grateful for the fabric of love and life that weaves us together. May those threads hold us all in love and in strength. Let us also hold in our hearts this day all those who reel from the grief and the fear and the devastation of violence in our schools in Florida and elsewhere, in our streets, those that are noticed and those that are ignored. Let us not rush to knee-jerk defenses for more protection, or a militarization of our culture, or some false sense of security in weaponry. Let us look deeper into a culture of violence, a culture of toxic masculinity, a culture of weaponized individualism. Let us humbly acknowledge our limitations in making our lives some bubble of safety, turning schools into something that resemble prisons or military bases more than community centers for learning and for growth and for children. Let us acknowledge also our capacity and our power to create communities of compassion and resilience and strength and love so that we support resources for communal education and learning, mental health and wholeness. Let us leverage all that we can toward the building of the beloved community. These words of meditation on this Music Sunday come from Leonard Bernstein. This will be our reply to violence, to make music more intensely, more beautifully, more devotedly than ever before. May it be so. Amen. Our hymn of meditation is Song of the 5,000. The words for it are in your order of service. You can remain seated, and the choir will lead us.
Story start off flip side. Underneath the surface there Let it
Stop the words now, declares the poet. A good admonishment for a minister to keep a homily short. Stop the words now and open the window in the center of your chest and let the Spirit fly in and out. Even if the world burns up, writes Rumi, there will be hidden instruments playing so the candle flickers and goes out. We have a piece of flint and a spark. We each come into this world, this beautiful, strange, broken world, like a piece of flint. And how we experience the world, its people, its places, its moments of sun and wind and open sky, its experience, are like sparks for the flint of a soul to light up and find its song. Music and song have a way of finding their way into your heart. Sometimes it's a simple earworm, a soundtrack almost to your life that you just can't get out of your head, or songs you hear on the radio, or songs you sing to your kids, or with your kids, or on the cartoons over and over again. Songs that bring back memory of past places or people, songs that are woven into your soul from your religious or cultural background or certain moments and times in your life. There are also songs of movements, songs that define generations or at least parts of it, songs that define social change or revolutions. Do you hear the people sing? There is a core to song and music because it is about identity. It's about community. On the streets in Minneapolis, I was taught some songs by activists of Black Lives Matter who were creating new songs for a new movement. Sometimes they danced to Kendrick Lamar's We're Gonna Be All Right, and other times they drew upon the wisdom and practices of the civil rights movement with call and response, songs that were easy for large groups of people to learn, and what's called a zipper song, changing one song only of each verse. This was one of the songs they taught me. The day's gonna come when we won't march no more. The day's gonna come when we won't march no more. But while my sister ain't equal and my brother can't breathe, hand in hand with my family, we're gonna fill these streets. It keeps going and it keeps going, just like that. Easy enough for large groups to learn as you march. And then the other part, the zipper part, not a classic zipper song, but whatever, musicians, it's okay, right? They just change one word at a time so you can get the gist, but then you can add it to make it timely to your movement and your moment, right? Can I get a senator marching with me? Can I get a preacher marching with me? Can I get an officer marching with me? We ain't gonna stop until the people are free. And the day gonna come when we won't march no more. And it keeps going. And it allows a beat for you to move in rhythm with a community. And it's about something deep. It's from the sparks of the very movement itself. The I Can't Breathe, My Brother Can't Breathe, is about Eric Garner in New York, right? And a poignant asking of who will join into the song, those in power, those with privilege. Will they join the march on the streets themselves? Because song is about identity, and the question becomes, what songs are we going to teach? What songs are we going to teach in our houses of worship and religion, of church? What songs are we going to learn by heart? What songs are we going to teach our children? What songs, lyrics, rhythms do we want them, future generations, to know? Sometimes the earth keeps some vibration going there in your heart, and that is you, writes poet Edgar Lee Masters. And if the people find that you can fiddle, why fiddle you must all your life. How could I till my 40 acres, not to speak of getting more, without a melody of horns, bassoons, and piccolos, stirred in my brain like crows and robins? And I never started to plow in my life that someone didn't stop in the road to invite me to dancing. So I ended up with 40 acres, and I ended up with a broken fiddle and a broken laugh and 1,000 memories and not a single regret. When we find our song, we are stopped in the road by someone or something that invites us into dancing, and we end up with 40 acres, and we end up with a broken fiddle, not because there's anything wrong with it, but we played it until it broke. You played it until the last note possible, and you wore it out because you played your heart out. A colleague of mine once shared a story about trying to choose what songs many years ago that they would sing to their newborn baby. It was right when the hymnal, the new gray hymnal came out, and so they were going through those songs, and they were doing these patriotic songs, and part of their family was from England, so they were singing God Save the Queen, and they were doing a variety of things. But they were reminded of the power of lullabies that create a groove in the soul and in the mind of a newborn. It's something almost sacred, the songs we choose to sing to a newborn baby in our arms, or to one another, or as a church, or on streets of protest. These are anthems about identity and hope and strength. So I want you to imagine a child that you knew or know, or yourself being held by someone that was a caretaker for you. Imagine holding that child, or imagine being held and hearing these words on the earliest days of your life. When you sing, you've got to sing with the strength of a lullaby. You'll never know until you try. And when you dream, you've got to dream with the strength of a lullaby. You'll never know until you try. Your song's inside you, let it guide you, let it be your lullaby. And then when you work, you've got to work. When you dream, you've got to dream. When you love, you've got to love. When you inspire, when you hope, when you dare, you've got to do it with the strength of a lullaby, something strong enough to hold the fragility of a newborn life. There is a song inside each of us. There is a song inside our collective communities. And even if the instrument breaks and the world burns up, it doesn't matter because we have fallen into the place where everything is music. Life is the opportunity to play our hearts out till the fiddle just breaks, until the very last note possible and the strings become worn. A broken fiddle is not the end of the song. It means that it has played enough melodies and enough songs and enough harmonies to fill the sky and the world with beauty and to fill your own soul with hope. We'll sing together hymn number 1060 out of your teal hymnal. I invite you to rise in body or spirit.
This
invite you, as you are comfortable and healthy, to grab a hand next to you, an elbow, or simply raise your hand to your heart or to the sky. Breathe deep the breath of life. Know that every day, in some corner of the world, in some corner of someone's heart, the world just burns right up. It seems like it's gone. We have pieces of flint enough, and we have sparks enough to light it up again with song and with harmony, with all its dissonance and all its beauty. We hold the song together. May it be so. Amen.
Go out into the highways.